Welcome to the Wildlife 440 debate on bison conservation in Montana. My name is Jennifer, and I will be presenting the introduction and narrating our conclusion. This debate addresses the ongoing conflict of whether bison in Montana should be conserved, with particular focus on the risk of disease transmission to livestock. We will present evidence showing that disease containment is possible and that bison have positive ecological and social benefits. From this, we posit that bison can and should be restored and conserved in Montana. The photo below depicts a herd in Lamar Valley, Yellowstone. This issue has a long history. Before European presence, American bison herds ranged across the greater portion of North America in the tens of millions. This made them essential to the native peoples and their livelihood, including use for food, shelter, clothing, and tools. Bison also co-evolved over these hundreds of thousands of years with North American biota, contributing to many of the grazing adaptations and trophic relationships. During the 1800s, the U.S. Army began campaigning to destroy these bison populations, an attempt to cut off the native peoples from this vital resource and to allow Europeans to successively occupy the land. By the 1880s, bison herds had nearly vanished, with only a few left on private ranches. Pelican Valley bison, which is in the Yellowstone area, were at approximately 2 dozen. In the 1900s, with Yellowstone as one of the pioneers, bison recovery finally began. The figure to the right illustrates the contrast between past and current numbers. Currently, American bison are listed as near threatened on the IUCN Red List. This is due to small populations and dependence on conservation programs. Specifically in Montana, nearly all bison herds are private. Tribal herds, totaling over 2,000, exist on 6 of the 7 reservations and have varying levels of management. Commercially raised bison, totaling around 15,000, are artificially selected and therefore not viable for establishing wild populations. The National Bison Range is the only public captive herd in Montana and is co-managed with Flathead Tribes and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. From out of state, free-ranging Yellowstone bison are allowed some seasonal movement into Montana. These plains bison are the only ones that have always been wild. The photo to the right depicts bison in a snowy Yellowstone winter. One of the most common arguments against bison reintroduction and conservation in Montana is the risk of bison transmitting brucellosis, a disease, to livestock, which is economically damaging. Cattle can become infected after contact with infected birth tissues left from bison when their ranges overlap. This is contended with the presence of brucellosis in Yellowstone bison. Yellowstone bison have optimal genetic diversity and adaptive capacity ideal for restoration into other areas, and would need non-reserve limited ranges for long-term population conservation viability. Also, technological advances show cattle DNA introgression, which likely reduces fitness, as much more common than previously thought. The only public herd confidently considered introgression-free is Yellowstone, and the only private herd likely free is the Castle Rock herd, which descended from translocated Yellowstone bison. The figure to the left depicts the cycle of brucellosis infection and transmission in bison. And now we will have Katie present our ecological arguments.